I was very fortunate to organise the visit of Nelson Mandela to Brixton with Prince Charles at the time. And that was really quite a moment because we'd all marched to free Nelson Mandela. Most people in Brixton knew of his challenges. So when he came to Brixton, there was something in the air. It was quite amazing. I think it's time to send the elevator back down, as they say in the States, and let other people come up and enjoy some of the fantastic relationships that I've got with the charities that we work with.
No. Hi, and welcome to What Fuels You, where we sit down with social impact leaders to uncover what it is that fuels them to drive more impact. I'm your host, Andrew Troup, and today I'm sipping coffee with David Adair, Director of Community Engagement at PwC UK, to talk about his journey, the stories that have shaped him, and what it is that fills his cup. Well, David, thank you so much for joining us today for this episode of What Fuels You. I'm so excited to sit down and dig into conversation with you and really get to know you a little bit better, understand a little bit more about the person who's doing the work behind the impact. So thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, I'm really looking forward to it.
So one of the first things I do with all of my guests is, since it is called What Fuels You, I love to understand from a beverage perspective what's fueling you. So I'd love to know if that's on a daily basis coffee, tea, water, wine, all of the above?
All of the above, but at different times. So I like to start the day with an Earl Grey tea, very early, go out into the garden, gather my thoughts, then around about 11, a flat white, and then, of course, on an evening like today when it's hot, a rosé wine, with friends, not a whole bottle on my own.
Oh, lovely. But what a lovely balance. So starting the day with tea, moving into the coffee, and then, of course, rounding it as you should, especially on a warm day, with a lovely rosé. I love that. Well, digging in a little bit deeper, going beyond the beverages, I'd love to just hear a little bit from you about what's energizing and fueling you on a regular basis, both personally and professionally. What are some of those things that are fueling you right now?
Well, it's definitely people. I'm a real people person. And I think with all the technology that's coming, it's really important to have those relationships. So I love having the relationships at home. I like having the relationships at work. And that's what really keeps me going.
Yeah, I love that. Relationships are so important, and it is the people in our lives that really do fuel us. So I love that. So talk to me a little bit as we dig in today. I want to talk about, you've certainly had, and we're going to talk quite a bit about your career in community engagement, some of the work that you've been doing that's led to the work you're doing in corporate social impact today. But talk to me, like, if I say the word community engagement, what's some of your first earliest memories? What's an early image that comes up for you when you think back to early days?
Well, too early. I'm a vicar's son, so my father's a vicar, the vicar of Wakefield, one of the vicars of Wakefield. So I always was brought up with that sense of community and supporting people in the community. So I think it really comes from that. They were Irish. Both my parents are Irish. They first generation to come over to the UK. So it was always a bit different. So I think it's recognising the difference in people and the difference in different people in the community that kind of keeps me going.
Tell me a little bit more. Tell me a little bit more about how you think your parents maybe have influenced a little bit of your journey when you look back.
My father was quite a strange vicar. He was more of a kind of social worker. He was a prison chaplain before he became a vicar. But he was quite eccentric. I mean, he's still alive. He's in a care home now. But he did this sermon on how difficult it was for the disciples to tell people that Jesus had risen from the dead. So he did a sermon, it was just after Easter, and he said, how many kids in the congregation would believe me if I said the font was full of sweets? So a few kids put their hands up. And then he said, and how many adults would believe me if I said I had my pyjamas on under my cassock? So he took his cassock off and had his pyjamas on. And then he said, and I've left my script behind. At which point the back doors of the church opened, a motorcycle came down, gave him his notes and went out. The kids were kind of screaming, the adults were kind of looking at each other. And it's quite a simplistic way of communicating something. But he said, try and go to work tomorrow or school and say, I was at church yesterday, the vicar had his pyjamas on, someone was going up and down the aisle on a motorbike, and no one will believe you. So I think from that early days, the kind of performance and the kind of impact that communicating an issue can have was quite ingrained in me, I think.
Wow, that's incredible. I love that example too. I know you have a background in the arts, and it sounds like maybe some of these early experiences shaped that. But tell me how some of these early experiences shape a little bit of how you look at the work that you're doing today and the leadership that you're doing today?
Yeah, well, I think being a vicar's son, and we lived in a very big house in a very poor area, but everybody thought we were very rich because we lived in this big house. My father was very industrial area, very working class area. So you were always a bit of an outsider, and I was called a puff before I know what a puff was. So my way to react to that was to kind of humour. And then I thought, people are enjoying this, so I'll do a bit more. And then enjoyed drama, and then went to the Manchester Youth Theatre in the summer, and that's when I met my logical family. I think you've got a biological family, and then your logical family who you meet. And I felt so at home. I thought, there's something in this. I'd like to go to drama school, so I went to Guildhall School of Music and Drama, was an actor for about 10 years, and then HIV and AIDS hit, and I started to go back into the closet because it's like you didn't want people to know you were gay because people would think you were HIV positive. I didn't want to tell my parents. So that was a big moment for me. But then I'm a great believer in serendipity, and things happen for a reason. So I started to form a theatre company called Contagious Theatre. We went into prisons doing safe sex workshops with young offenders and prisoners. And I don't know if you've been to prison, but if you go into a prison, when you see that 80% of the people in there are from black and ethnic minority backgrounds, you think, well, what's wrong with this picture? What can we do to stop that? So I then ran the Albany Theatre in Deptford, a multicultural arts centre. Whilst at the Albany, I met my husband now, my partner, and we've been together 32 years.
Amazing.
Which is a lot in gay years. I think like dogs, aren't we? It's like, is that should I be 121 or something?
We most certainly are, yeah, I think it is. At least a multiple of 3. Talk to me a little bit about, before we dive deeper into the work you're doing now, related to more corporate social impact and responsible business, talk to me about some of your early roots as it relates to volunteer work and volunteer engagement with nonprofit. What did that look like? What kind of roles? How did that shape a little bit of how you think about the world today?
Yeah, sure. So when I was at the Albany Theatre, we were really running small courses, and there was a great charity there, Hearts and Minds, that work with people with special needs, and they have their own nightclubs and things. But I really wanted to look at how can you get people into work and how can you really help that. So I was approached by the Prince's Trust, which is now the King's Trust, to lead that programme in Brixton. It was very big in Wales and Scotland, a lot of outward bounds, but not really in an inner-city multicultural environment. So I did Brixton, and my colleague, Hope Powell, who's now she was the coach of the women's football team, did Southwark, and we worked together. But I was very fortunate to organise the visit of Nelson Mandela to Brixton. Wow. With Prince Charles at the time, and that was really quite a moment because we'd all marched to free Nelson Mandela. Most people in Brixton knew of his challenges, so when he came to Brixton, there was something in the air. It was quite amazing, and I had to battle to get more young people in to see him because they wanted the local dignitaries, and I said, well, no, he wants to meet local people. So all my young people from the course came in, and I'll never forget, he came up to me and he said, David, it's amazing what you're doing with young people. Keep up the good work because it's so important. And I thought, well, wow, from Nelson Mandela, where'd you go from here? Yeah. PwC.
Oh, I love that, though. Tell me a little bit more about that moment. How did that feel? How did that feel engaging with someone like Nelson Mandela? I mean, it's a very surreal moment when we meet somebody that has had such a public figure. And yet, in this moment, to your point, he really just wanted to connect, not just with you, but with everyone there on a more sort of localized level. How did that feel? How did people feel in that moment?
The atmosphere in the room was tangible. People were just so excited, but at the same time in awe of him, because it was like you knew this monumental figure was coming to Brixton where you live. It was pretty special.
Tell me a little bit about some early influences for you, either people or things that influenced how you think about leadership and maybe even how you lead today.
In between the Prince's Trust and going to PwC, I ran a charity called Talent and Skills 2000, which was getting more digital, young people upskilled in digital. It's ahead of its time, really. But we got some pro bono support from PwC, and their advice was to close the charity down. Oh my goodness. So I always say when people ask, we want some pro bono support, well, be careful what what you wish for, because
And did the charity actually close?
It did close down.
Wow.
So I wrote a letter. That's how old I am. Remember a letter with your CV? You probably don't. But anyway, we used to write letters with our CVs, and to who was then the head of community engagement at PwC, saying, well, do you know anybody in your community partners who may need a manager? She said, well, actually, we've just merged PW, Cooper's Lybrand. We're looking for someone for the regions. Would you consider coming to work for us? And I thought, oh, really, a corporate? Okay, I'll give it a couple of years, and that's 25 years ago.
So clearly something clicked, something ultimately has been working there, which is great. Let's dig into this a little bit though, because I would love to understand a little bit more about that sort of pivotal moment. First of all, and now that you've been at PwC for 25 years, does that sort of recommendation, that pro bono recommendation all those years ago to close the charity, does that make sense? Does that still make sense? Do you see why that was the recommendation?
Yeah, I do. It was after 9/11, the banks were jittery, and there was a reason for it. It was the right thing to do. And again, serendipity, I'm a great believer things happen for a reason. But I do think that people see organisations like PwC, these big monolithic beasts, but they're made up of people, and people want to make a change. And it's very important to have a good ending. So when we moved to our new building in More London, we had an old fire station, which the original idea was to knock it down and build the building to the main road, but we couldn't because more people died in the fire of Tooley Street than the fire of London, or were recorded of dying. I think only 6 people were recorded of dying in the fire of London when there were lots more. My challenge was to convince the board to turn it into a social enterprise centre where we housed the School for Social Entrepreneurs, Social Enterprise UK, and had our own social enterprise brigade, which trained those at risk of homelessness into cooking. That went on even through COVID. We kept it going, and it ran for 15 years. But there became a time when restaurants, it's very difficult to make a profit. It was expensive to train the people. We just had to bring it to an end. But we ensured that the charity we worked with had another partner, which is now West Ham Foundation, and so they moved there, and we still support the charity.
Yeah. And what I love about that example is that's really the nice way to really approach a partnership, right? It's not just I'm a funder providing you funds and or now not providing you funds. It's a partnership saying we're doing this work together, we're trying to achieve a specific impact, but if there's a point where we have to pivot, really helping you find maybe a new partner, something that's more appropriate in this moment, while we all sort of prepare for transition. So love that example. Talk to me a little bit about the work you're doing now. So let's talk a little bit about what are some of the community engagement focus areas that you're working on right now.
So through the foundation, which we have now, we work on mental health and well-being and social mobility. So we partner with Mental Health UK, but also the elements of interwork, why people are off work with mental health and how can we help them get back into work. So we run that interwork programme. We also, social mobility is a big key for us as a firm. We want to be more representative of the workforce, but also we want to go out and give people the opportunity. So actually post-COVID, all our placements and work experience went online, and we thought it was really important that people from a social mobility background get to come into the firm and physically get to see what it's like in a business. So we now have 250 paid work experience through the summer, which we operate through our community programme.
That's incredible. I think that social mobility piece is so important, so it's great to see the work that you're doing there specifically. So tell me how that resonates with employees today. How do they feel about that as one of the focus areas that you're focused in on?
Oh, they're very passionate about it. We've got 13 networks at PwC, but the largest one is our social mobility and refugee network. They're very passionate about people who don't get the opportunity to come, and they may not get a job at PwC, but at least we can upskill them and get them job ready. The young people are very passionate about that.
One thing that sort of occurred to me as we were talking about this, we talk a little bit about misunderstanding as well, right? To your point, folks may be misunderstanding what the current culture or the corporate culture really is. And so talk to me a little bit about what you think there are as it relates to misunderstandings to the work that you're doing, to the community engagement, the work that you're doing, whether that be external folks misunderstanding the work that PwC is doing in the community, or whether it's maybe internal misunderstandings about the work that you and your team are doing.
Yeah, I think a lot of charities obviously want money, and they think that that's the key thing we can give them, when really as a professional services firm the biggest impact we can have are the skills of our people and their accountants, so pretty tight on the money, although we do give money obviously. But then I think there's misconceptions of people in business as to what charities are. Oh, they're disorganised, they haven't got a strategy. But when they actually sit down and talk to them, they find out that sometimes there's a one-person band and they're having such a huge impact on very little resources. It makes them come back to PwC and think, wow, aren't I lucky to be here?
That's a really important thing to raise up, because to your point, there is often a misconception that in the nonprofit charity space there is disorganization or more could be done, and if I just bring my company lens it will fix it. And that's actually not the case. In fact, most nonprofits are quite strategic, a little bit more efficient, quite frankly, with their resource and fund. And we can bring skills, but it's not necessarily, oh, I have a better way of doing it because I'm coming from a corporate environment. It's learning, how do I bring those skills in a way that's only going to further amplify the great work that you're already doing as a charity, right?
Yeah, and it's the same with people at PwC. They all want to fix things. They think we're going to solve a problem. We can solve your problem. But then when they sit and they talk about things and they sort of pack what the issue is, they realise that actually they learn a lot from it as well.
Yeah. To that end, I'd love to ask you a question to reflect now on your younger self. What if you had an opportunity to go all the way back and talk to a very young David? What would be something that you might say to him as he's about to embark on this journey, which is going to be a roller coaster of different experiences, and ultimately still be threaded together with this idea of purpose and people at the heart? What might be something you would say back to him?
Well, I'd say circumstances make you what you are. You may have a plan, and I did have a plan. I wanted to be an actor, I wanted to do this, but then you go down and life takes you in a different direction. So I would say don't worry about the future. Things will happen, circumstances will change, but just keep positive, keep resilient. Don't worry about losing your hair.
I love that. We can't control everything, to your point, right? Just keep stepping forward one step at a time, keep resilient, keep persisting, because it might not be what we planned, but that doesn't mean it won't be an equally rewarding and wonderful and genuine experience, right?
Absolutely.
What I'd like to do next is I have a segment that we do here on What Fuels You, where I just ask a few rapid fire questions.
Okay,
so get a little sip in. I'm going to grab my card here. So I'll ask a couple questions. Feel free to answer one word or a couple of words. First, if I said structured plan or go with the flow, which is your style?
Oh, I'm very much go with the flow.
Tell me more. What's a good example of you just going with the flow?
Well, I don't really like a structured plan, which it can be quite difficult working in a professional services firm. But I think people recognise people have different ways to work. Yeah, I like to maybe pilot things and then see how they develop. I think it was Quentin Crisp said, if at first you don't succeed, maybe failure is your thing, and you can learn through failing. So I think it's good to fail at certain things because you learn from that experience.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I'm a firm believer of fail fast and then pick yourself back up and try again and try something different. So I love that. We talked coffee or tea. I was going to ask which, but it's really both was your answer, is what I heard. So we start with tea with a little bit of milk, I believe.
Yep.
But then we move into the flat white in the afternoon.
Yeah, and then the wine.
Well, of course, we can't leave out the wine, most importantly. Tell me about one non-negotiable in your life that just keeps you grounded.
Oh, it's definitely the balance of family life with work life. My husband and I, we've got a dog, we love to go walking, we love to get out in the fresh air. It's very important to me.
So with that, David, I have a few more questions just to kind of round us out for today. And the next one, I actually think for some of my guests is the hardest, so we'll see how you feel about it. But I actually would love you to reflect on and share with me, what do you think is one of the contributions that you're most proud of, that you've provided in your career, in your life, something that you're most proud of?
I think it would be, one, being with my husband for 32 years. That's one.
That's a huge accomplishment, so congratulations.
And the second one would be the fire station, to convince the board to turn that building into a social enterprise centre, and for an accountancy firm to run a restaurant was quite a big achievement. And we got loads of people through that into jobs in the culinary industry, so I'm very proud of that.
Yeah, as you should be. That's a huge accomplishment and really no small feat. Talk to me a little bit toward the future now. As we look toward the future, and specifically as you look at the work that you're doing in community engagement, in corporate social impact, What do you sort of see in the future that makes you hopeful about the work we're doing in our sector, in our space?
I'm very hopeful about the future. I think, technology is a tool. It's not the be-all and end-all. People will want to have that interpersonal reaction with people. So I'm very positive that volunteering will continue. People will want to share their skills. People will want the skills. So I'm very positive.
Yeah. Which the good news is the data has consistently showed, even our own reports, volunteering continues to increase. So despite all the pressures that everyone's feeling, even younger generations getting out there, they're volunteering. So I'm with you on that, hopeful. And the data supports it. So we're good there.
Brilliant.
Talk to me finally a little bit about the future as you see it for yourself. So when you look toward the future, what might be next for David on this purpose-led journey? Is it certainly maybe continued work in corporate social impact, but is it other things as well? Is there another nonprofit that's calling you, a cause, the stage?
Yeah, well, no, not the stage. But
there's still time.
But being on the board of maybe an arts organisation, we work with the Domnar Theatre, we work, we work with Go Live, work with young people. So I think I'll definitely be involved in the arts. I was 63 this year, so I'm going to try and reduce my hours and look to do other things. I think it's time to send the elevator back down, as they say in the States, and let other people come up and enjoy some of the fantastic relationships that I've got with the charity that we work with. So, yeah.
I love that. Well, as you send the elevator back down, then you can transition to the next elevator that takes you up to the next opportunity, right?
Yeah.
I love that. Well, David, thank you so much for joining me, for being willing to have just this open conversation today, for sharing a little bit about your journey and your experiences, what has shaped you as a leader, and really what you see for the space and for this work moving forward. Really appreciate it.
No, thank you, Andrew. It's been great. It's been really nice to chat with you.